about what can go wrong when South African entrepreneurs set up an overseas entity. So we've come across a lot of clients who told us they've set up an entity overseas, whether it's a US entity, a Delaware LLC, or an entity in Dubai or the UK. And they've done this because they have clients in the overseas entity, and they think this is a great way to earn the revenues in hard currency, keep them outside of the country, and reduce their tax. And what we want to talk about today is why it's not as simple as that. So first of all, where a South African resident establishes a foreign company, first of all, you need to think about exchange control, whether you need to get exchange control approval to set up that entity or transfer any funds overseas required to establish it or operate it. Secondly, you need to think about whether that company could actually be regarded as tax resident in South Africa under the place of effective management rules. So under South African tax law, a company is regarded as South African tax resident and therefore subject to South African tax if it is incorporated in South Africa or if it's regarded as being effectively managed from South Africa. That means that you could easily set up an overseas entity and end up running it from South Africa such that it becomes a South African tax resident entity and you haven't achieved anything. That's one risk. The second risk is it could be regarded as a controlled foreign company. So if your foreign company is directly or indirectly held by South African residents, and typically where more than 50% of the holdings or economic interest is held by South Africans, then the foreign entity is regarded as a controlled foreign company, and it has to be disclosed in the tax return of the South African tax residents, and South African tax may even be due on the overseas profits. Unless it meets a specific exemption. And the two most common exemptions are the high tax rate exemption, which is quite a complicated calculation, but generally provides that if the foreign tax you're suffering is more than I think it's 75% of the tax you would suffer in South Africa, then you're regarded as not having done it for tax purposes and you don't have to pay South African tax on the controlled foreign company's profit. The second one is to do with the level of substance that the foreign company has. And if it has sufficient substance, it's regarded as having a foreign business establishment exemption. But those rules are quite complex. So you always need to think about, could your entity be a controlled foreign company? And do you need to think about South African tax as a result of that? The third one is transfer pricing. So almost always your foreign entity will be regarded as connected to you and to your South African entities, and indeed any other entities you own. And thus you will be required to demonstrate that everything that that company earns and all of the transactions it does in relation to other connected parties are at arm's length terms, and you'll be obliged to be able to demonstrate that. There's also very complex rules in South Africa related to general anti-avoidance and reportable arrangements. So basically, even if you steer clear of the place effective management, control foreign company, and transfer pricing rules so that your foreign income is not taxed in South Africa, there's also a rule that applies if you have seen to set up your foreign company purely or mainly for tax reasons, and then the taxation authority have the ability to rework what you've done in a way to make you pay more tax. And the last one is reportable arrangements. There's a whole list of transactions that are regarded as naughty, and if you do one of those transactions, you're required to tell SARS all about it. So this is a very short summary of some very complex and far-reaching risks that need to be considered when a South African person or company establishes a foreign company overseas. We have a newsletter that explains this in more detail, and if you have any questions, please contact us. Thank you.